The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 3 hours, and Ambassador Velos was running out of hope. He stood in the center of the massive chamber, his reptilian scales dulled with exhaustion and stress. Around him, representatives from 47 different species watched from their floating platforms, their faces showing everything from pity to indifference. "Please," Velos said, his voice breaking slightly. "My people are dying. The destroyers have taken 12 of our systems in the last 6 months. Our military is down to 30% strength. We have millions of refugees with nowhere to go. We need help." High Counselor Trevix, a floating jellyfish-like being from one of the oldest civilizations, pulsed with soft light. His translated voice echoed through the chamber. "The Council sympathizes with the Kelvar Union situation. However, most member states are dealing with their own security concerns. We cannot commit military forces to what appears to be a regional conflict." Velos felt his claws dig into his palms. Regional conflict. They were calling the extinction of his entire species a regional conflict. "We're not asking for armies," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Medical supplies, food, maybe a few support ships to help with evacuations. Anything you can spare." One by one, the council members made their offers. The Torvan Empire would send 3 hospital ships. The Confederation of Free Worlds could spare some food shipments. The Austranian Collective offered thoughts and prayers, which Velos knew meant absolutely nothing. It was better than nothing, but barely. These supplies might buy his people a few more weeks, maybe a month if they were lucky. "Has the human delegation responded?" asked Counselor Mirath, a bird-like being with bright blue feathers. There was a hint of dismissal in her tone. Everyone knew the humans were still new to the galactic stage. They had only joined the Council 80 years ago, which was nothing in galactic terms. Velos checked his data pad. "Yes, actually. Admiral Hanna sent a message this morning. She said humanity received our distress call and that help is coming soon." A few council members made sounds that might have been laughter. The humans were known for being enthusiastic about everything. They probably thought sending a cargo ship or 2 would make them look like heroes. Velos appreciated the gesture, but he knew better than to expect much from such a young species. "Very well," Trevix said. "This session is concluded. The Council will monitor the situation and reconvene if circumstances change. Ambassador Velos, you have our deepest sympathies." Velos wanted to scream. His people didn't need sympathy. They needed weapons, ships, and soldiers. But he bowed respectfully and left the chamber. There was nothing more he could do here. Halfway across the galaxy, High Chancellor Mira stood in the war room of Kelvar Prime, staring at the holographic display with General Thrace. The map showed their territory in blue, with red markers indicating destroyer presence. There was a lot more red than blue these days. "They took the Velnar system," Thrace said quietly. His voice was heavy with grief. "That's 3 billion people gone, consumed by those machines." Mira closed her eyes. 3 billion. The destroyers didn't take prisoners. They didn't negotiate. They simply appeared, destroyed everything in their path, and used the raw materials to build more of themselves. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They just killed. "What's our current fleet strength?" Mira asked, though she already knew the answer would be bad. 48 capital ships still operational. Maybe 200 smaller vessels. We're losing ships faster than we can repair them. Thrace pulled up another display. "At this rate, we'll have to begin evacuating the homeworld within 3 weeks. Maybe 4 if we're lucky." And the Council's response? Token aid. Medical ships, some food supplies. Nothing that will actually help us survive. Thrace hesitated. "The humans said they're sending help." Mira made a bitter sound. "The humans? I'm sure they'll send a few cargo ships and pat themselves on the back for being good galactic citizens." She immediately felt guilty for the harsh words. Any help was better than nothing, and at least the humans had responded. "I'm sorry. That was unfair. I'm just tired. We're all tired," Thrace said. He changed the display to show the outer defense line. Captain Wren is holding position at the frontier line with what's left of the 7th Fleet. 12 ships. That's all that stands between the destroyers and our core worlds right now. Mira looked at the display for a long moment. 12 ships, against an enemy that had already destroyed hundreds. It was hopeless, but they had to try. They had to buy time for the evacuations, for the refugees, for any chance at survival. "Tell Wren to hold as long as he can," she said quietly. "Every hour matters now." Captain Wren stood on the bridge of his warship, the Steadfast, and tried not to think about how empty space felt around him. Once, the 7th Fleet had been 50 ships strong, the pride of the Kelvar military. Now he had 12 vessels, most of them damaged, all of them running low on ammunition and power. His sensor officer looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm picking up jump signatures. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace." Wren felt his blood go cold. "The destroyers?" "No, sir, the signatures are wrong. These are... I'm not sure what these are." She adjusted her sensors, confusion clear on her face. "Sir, these are human jump signatures." "Human?" Wren moved to look at her display. The humans were here already? That was faster than expected. He felt a small warmth in his chest. At least someone had come. Even if it was just a few cargo ships, at least his fleet wouldn't die alone out here. "How many ships?" he asked. His sensor officer didn't respond. She was staring at her screen, her eyes wide. "Officer, I asked how many ships." I don't..." She looked up at him and Wren saw genuine shock on her face. "Captain, my sensors are showing over 300 contacts." "No, wait, 400. Still climbing. That couldn't be right. Check your equipment." "Those readings are impossible." "I've checked 3 times, sir. The readings are accurate." Her voice shook slightly. 500 contacts now." 600. "Sir, they're still coming." Wren grabbed the edge of his console. This had to be a mistake. A sensor malfunction. Maybe the jump had disrupted their equipment somehow. He pulled up his own display and felt his world tilt. Ships. Hundreds of ships. They filled his sensors like a swarm, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, cruisers, support vessels, medical ships, construction ships, every type of military vessel imaginable, all bearing the insignia of Earth's United Fleet. "Captain, I'm being hailed," his communications officer said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's the human flagship, the Indomitable." Wren's hands shook as he accepted the communication. A human face appeared on his screen, a male with dark hair and calm eyes. He looked tired but alert, and he wore the uniform of a fleet captain. "Captain Wren of the Kelvar 7th Fleet," the human said in perfect Kelvar language. "I am Captain Day 1 of the Earth vessel Indomitable. We received your distress call. Sorry it took us a few days to get here. We had to gather the fleet." Wren stared at him. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Finally, he managed to speak. "Captain Day 1, How many ships do you have?" Day 1 glanced at something off-screen. 843 vessels in this first wave. Admiral Hanna is bringing another 200 with the supply convoy. She should arrive within 48 hours. First wave. Another 200. Wren felt dizzy. "Captain, forgive me, but I must ask. Your government approved sending over 1,000 military vessels. Your entire fleet?" "Not our entire fleet," Day 1 said with a slight smile. "We kept some ships back to defend Earth. Can't leave home completely unprotected. This is about 90% of our military force, but we only asked for medical supplies, some food, maybe a few support ships." Day 1's expression became serious. "Captain Wren, with respect, your people asked for what you thought you could get. We're giving you what you actually need. You're facing an extinction-level threat. Medical supplies won't stop that. Food won't stop that." He leaned forward slightly. "But we will." Wren couldn't speak. Around him, his bridge crew stared at their screens in complete shock. In the distance, the human fleet moved into formation, their ships taking defensive positions around his small fleet. Hundreds of warships, all here to help, all here to fight for people they had never met. "Captain Wren," Day 1 said gently. "Where do you need us?" Wren looked at the massive fleet displayed on his sensors. For the first time in 6 months, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. "Everywhere," he whispered. "We need you everywhere." The news spread through Kelvar space like wildfire. Within hours, every military base, every refugee camp, every remaining colony knew the same impossible fact. The humans had sent their entire fleet. Not a token force. Not a symbolic gesture. Their whole military. High Chancellor Mira sat in her office staring at the reports on her desk. She had read them 5 times and they still didn't make sense. 1,043 human warships. 90% of Earth's military force halfway across the galaxy, coming to help a species they barely knew. General Thrace stood by the window, looking out at the city below. "The people are celebrating in the streets," he said quietly. "They think we're saved. Are we?" Mira asked. She wasn't sure anymore. The scale of what the humans had done was beyond anything she had expected. Beyond anything anyone had expected. I don't know, Thrace admitted. But for the first time in months, I think we might have a chance. Mira's communicator chimed. It was Ambassador Velos calling from the council station. She accepted the call and his face appeared on her screen. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Chancellor, I just received confirmation from our fleet. The humans really did send over 1,000 ships. The entire council is in shock. Half of them think it's a mistake. The other half think it's a trap. What do you think? Mira asked. Velos was quiet for a moment. I think we found out what kind of allies humans really are. I contacted Earth's diplomatic office to ask why they sent so many ships. Do you know what they told me? Mira shook her head. They said, you're our allies. Allies don't abandon allies. Velos's voice cracked slightly. I tried to explain that we only asked for medical supplies, that we didn't expect military support. The diplomat seemed confused. She said, we know what you asked for. But you needed more than you asked for, so we're giving you what you need. Mira felt something tight in her chest. In Kelvar culture, you only provided what was requested. Asking for more would be shameful. Giving more than requested would be insulting, implying the other person couldn't assess their own needs. But humans clearly didn't think that way. They operate on completely different principles, Thrace said, overhearing the conversation. To them, if someone is drowning, you don't just throw them a rope and walk away. You jump in and pull them out, even if it means risking your own life? Mira asked. Especially then, Velos said from the screen. Admiral Hana is requesting a strategic meeting. She wants to review our military situation and plan the defense. She's already on her way to Kelvar Prime. Mira stood up. Then we better prepare to meet her. General, gather all our senior commanders. If the humans are willing to risk everything for us, the least we can do is work with them properly. Admiral Hana arrived 12 hours later. She was a tall woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, and she moved with the confident stride of someone who had spent decades in command. Captain Daewon accompanied her, along with several other human officers. The meeting took place in the war room, with Mira, Thrace, and a dozen Kelvar commanders on one side of the table. Hana and her officers on the other. For a moment, everyone just looked at each other. Hana broke the silence. Thank you for meeting with us, Chancellor. I know this situation is unusual. Unusual, Mira repeated. She almost laughed. Admiral, your government sent its entire military to help us. That's beyond unusual. That's unprecedented in the history of the Galactic Council. Hana nodded. I understand this might seem strange to you, but from our perspective, it's simple. You're our allies. You asked for help. We're helping. We asked for supplies, Thrace pointed out. Not a fleet. You asked for what you thought you could get, Hana said bluntly. But let's be honest about the situation. You're facing an enemy that has already destroyed 12 of your systems. Your fleet is down to 30% strength. Medical supplies and food won't stop the destroyers. They'll just mean your people are well fed when the enemy arrives. The truth of it hit like a physical blow. Mira had known it, of course. But hearing it said out loud, so directly, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Hana pulled up a holographic display of Kelvar space. The way I see it, you have 3 choices. 1, evacuate everyone you can and abandon your territory. 2, keep fighting alone and lose within a month. 3, let us help you actually win this war. She looked at Mira directly. What do you want to do? Mira looked at the map, at the red markers showing destroyer positions, at the blue markers showing her remaining fleets, so few compared to what they had been. Then she looked at the green markers that had just appeared, showing human fleet positions. There were so many green markers. We want to win, she said firmly. Tell us how. For the next 6 hours they planned. Hana and her officers explained human military doctrine, which was completely different from Kelvar strategy. The Kelvar fought in organized formations, ships staying in strict tactical groups. It was efficient and professional. Humans fought like predators. Their ships worked in small packs, moving independently but coordinating perfectly. They attacked from multiple angles, covered each other's weaknesses, and adapted constantly. It looked chaotic on paper, but Thrace could see the logic behind it. The destroyers rely on overwhelming numbers and perfect coordination, explained Lieutenant Taeyang, a young human tactical officer. They fight like a single organism because they basically are one. The hive mind controls everything. So how do we beat that? Asked one of the Kelvar commanders. We don't fight like an organism, Tae Yang said simply. We fight like a pack of wolves hunting a bear. The bear is bigger and stronger, but the wolves are smarter. They strike from different angles, retreat when pressed, wear it down. He pulled up tactical simulations. Your ships and ours fight differently. But if we combine our strengths, we can create something the destroyers haven't seen before. Mira watched the simulations play out. Kelvar ships providing long-range firepower and solid formations. Human ships darting in for close strikes and rapid repositioning. Together they covered each other's weaknesses. Apart they would fail. When will the destroyers attack again? Hana asked. Our scouts estimate 3 to 5 days, Thrace said. They're gathering forces at the edge of our territory. When they come, it'll be in strength. Good, Hana said, and everyone stared at her. She smiled grimly. That gives us 3 days to integrate our forces and train together. By the time they arrive, we'll be ready. You sound confident, Mira said. I am, Hana replied. Chancellor, your people have been fighting alone against impossible odds for 6 months. You've lost battles, but you never stopped fighting. That takes incredible courage. She gestured to the map. Now you're not alone. The destroyers have never faced humans in battle. They don't know what we're capable of. That's our advantage. What are humans capable of? Mira asked. Hana's expression became hard. When we decide something needs to be protected, we protect it. When we decide an enemy needs to be stopped, we stop them. The destroyers threatened our allies. That was their mistake. Captain Wren floated his ship among the human fleet, still unable to fully process what he was seeing. His 12 damaged vessels looked like toys next to the human armada. Battleships larger than anything the Kelvar had ever built. Carriers holding hundreds of fighter craft. Destroyers bristling with weapons. But what struck him most was the support fleet. Hospital ships with full medical facilities. Construction ships already building supply depots and repair stations. Tankers carrying fuel. Cargo vessels loaded with ammunition and parts. The humans hadn't just sent warships. They had sent everything needed to fight a war. His communicator chimed. It was Captain Daewon from the Indomitable. Captain Wren, my engineering chief, wants to look at your damaged ships. We can get you back to full operational status within 48 hours. Captain, you don't need to. We do. Daewon interrupted gently. You've been fighting this war for 6 months with no support. Let us help. Besides, we're going to be fighting together soon. I want your ships at full strength. Wren felt that tight feeling in his chest again. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet, Daewon said. Thank me after we win. The human fleet moved into defensive positions along the frontier line. Wren watched them work with professional efficiency, ships taking up positions that created overlapping fields of fire. They weren't just parking randomly. They were building a trap. He received reports from other Kelvar commanders across their territory. Everywhere, human ships were arriving, taking positions, coordinating with local forces. In 3 days, they had transformed the defensive situation from hopeless to possible. The Kelvar people, who had been preparing for evacuation and death, suddenly had hope again. Children who had stopped playing were laughing in the streets. Adults who had accepted the end were making plans for the future. All because a species they barely knew had decided to help. Wren looked at the human ships on his sensors. He thought about his own government's response to other species' distress calls over the years. The Kelvar had always provided exactly what was requested, nothing more. It was proper. It was professional. It was the way things were done. But watching the human fleet prepare for battle, Wren realized something. The destroyers came on the 4th day, exactly when the scouts had predicted. Captain Wren watched them emerge from the darkness of space like a plague. Thousands of ships, each one a twisted combination of organic material and machine parts, all built from the bodies of dead worlds and consumed civilizations. I count 4,000 enemy vessels, his sensor officer reported, her voice steady despite the fear Wren could see in her eyes. They're moving in standard wave formation, 4,000, against their combined fleet of roughly 1,500. The odds were bad, but they had been worse before. The difference now was the green markers on his screen, showing human ships scattered throughout the defensive line. Captain Daewon's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Daewon. Hold your positions. Wait for the signal. Wren checked his weapons. The human engineering teams had done more than repair his ship. They had upgraded it. New targeting systems, better power distribution, ammunition that the humans had shared from their own reserves. His vessel was more capable now than it had been in years. The destroyer fleet moved closer, and Ren could see them more clearly now. Ships that looked like they were grown rather than built, covered in strange protrusions and glowing with sick green light. They had no crews, no individual pilots, just the hive mind, controlling everything with perfect coordination. They're accelerating. Thrace reported from the command center on Kelvar Prime. Impact in 5 minutes. In the medical bay of the human flagship Indomitable, Dr. Minji checked her supplies one last time. She had been through combat situations before, but never anything like this. The projections estimated hundreds of casualties in the first hour alone. Her team of 30 doctors and medics would have to work miracles to save them all. "Doctor, are we ready?" asked one of her nurses, a young woman named Hye-jin who had only been out of medical school for 2 years. "We're as ready as we can be," Minji said, trying to sound confident. "Remember your training. Triage first. Save who you can. Don't waste time on cases that are already lost." The words felt harsh, but they were necessary. In battle, you couldn't save everyone. You had to make impossible choices. "The Kelvar have their wounded coming to us too," Hye-jin said. "I read their medical files. Their biology is different." "Not that different," Minji assured her. "Blood still needs to circulate. Organs still need to function. We'll figure it out as we go." She hoped that was true. On the bridge, Lieutenant Tae Yang watched the destroyer formation with intense focus. He had spent 3 days studying their attack patterns from old battle footage. They always did the same thing: mass their forces into a giant wave and crash into the defensive line like a hammer. It had worked against every enemy they had faced. "Sir, they're maintaining formation," he reported to Captain Daewon. "No deviation from expected behavior." "Good," Daewon said calmly. "That means they haven't learned anything new. Admiral, we're ready on your command." Admiral Hana's voice came through from her ship. "All vessels, this is Hana. Remember the plan. Trust your training. Trust each other. Today we show these machines what happens when they threaten our allies." She paused. "All ships execute attack pattern Delta 7. The human fleet suddenly broke formation. Ships that had been in neat defensive lines scattered in dozens of different directions. To an outside observer, it looked like panic, like the humans were retreating in chaos. Captain Ren felt his heart sink. What were they doing? But then Daewon's calm voice came through his private channel. "Captain Ren, hold your formation. We're not retreating. We're repositioning." Ren watched his sensors and slowly understood. The human ships weren't fleeing. They were spreading out, moving to flank positions on both sides of the destroyer formation. The enemy was flying straight into what would become a kill box. The destroyers, seeing what looked like a fleeing enemy, accelerated even faster. They wanted to catch the human ships before they could escape. It was exactly what the humans wanted them to do. "Wait for it," Daewon said softly. "Wait for it." The destroyer fleet pushed deeper into the defensive zone. The lead ships were now surrounded on 3 sides by human vessels. On Ren's sensors, it looked like a closing fist. "Now." Hana's voice rang out. "All ships, fire!" The darkness of space lit up with weapons fire. Human railguns launched solid metal slugs at speeds that made them nearly unstoppable. Missiles streaked from their pods, thousands of them, each one guided by sophisticated targeting systems. Point defense lasers created walls of light that destroyed anything that came close. The destroyer fleet staggered under the initial impact. Dozens of ships exploded in the first seconds. The hive mind had never faced an ambush like this before. They had expected a stationary defense. Instead, they had flown into a trap. But the destroyers adapted quickly. That was what made them so dangerous. The hive mind was a single intelligence controlling thousands of ships, and it could change tactics instantly. The formation shifted, ships breaking into smaller groups to engage the human vessels individually. "They're adapting," Tae Yang reported, "shifting to close combat tactics." "Then we adapt too," Daewon replied. "All ships pattern Echo 3. Stay in your attack groups. Watch your wingmen." The battle became chaos. Human ships worked in packs of 5 or 6, each group covering the others. When one ship took damage, the others moved to protect it. When they saw an opening, they struck hard and then pulled back. It was controlled chaos, organized mayhem, and it was working. The Kelvar fleet joined the fight, their ships providing the steady firepower that the mobile human vessels could rally around. Ren led his squadron in a wide arc, his beam weapons cutting through destroyer hulls while human destroyers kept the enemy off his flanks. "This is incredible," his tactical officer said. "The humans are everywhere at once." She was right. Ren couldn't track all the human ships. They moved too fast, attacked from too many angles. But somehow they never got in each other's way. Somehow they always seemed to know where their allies were. In the medical bay, the first casualties started arriving. Dr. Minji moved from bed to bed, assessing injuries with quick efficiency. A human pilot with burns across half his body, a Kelvar gunner with a collapsed lung, a human engineer missing an arm. The beds filled faster than she wanted to think about. "We need more supplies in Bay 3, she called out. Hyojin ran to get them while Minji kept working. There was no time to think, no time to feel, just the next patient, the next injury, the next life to save. A badly wounded Kelvar soldier grabbed her arm. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for coming." Minji didn't have time to respond. She just squeezed his hand once and moved to the next bed. Words could come later. Right now she had work to do. The battle raged for 3 hours. Both sides took heavy losses, but the humans kept adapting. Every time the hive mind changed tactics, Taeyang predicted the next move and adjusted the fleet response. It was like a deadly game of chess played at incredible speed. Engineer Bora worked frantically in the bowels of the Indomitable, keeping the ship's systems running despite multiple hits. Power fluctuated, hull breaches opened to space, and systems failed, but she and her team kept the ship fighting. When one power line failed, they rerouted through backup systems. When a weapon turret went offline, they had it back up in minutes. "We're losing pressure in sections 12 through 15, one of her engineers shouted. "Seal them and reroute life support," Bora called back. "And find me more power for the shields." "The captain needs them!" On the bridge, Daewon watched as his ship shuddered from another impact. "Shield strength at 40%, reported his defensive officer. "Hold position," Daewon said calmly. He was protecting 3 damaged human destroyers that were pulling back for repairs. If he moved, they would be exposed. "Bora, I need those shields." "Working on it, sir," came her voice from engineering. 30 seconds later, the shield strength jumped back up to 60%. "That's all I can give you." "It's enough," Daewon said. "Good work." Taeyang suddenly leaned forward at his station. "Sir, I'm seeing something." "The destroyer fleet has command nodes. Those larger ships in the back, they're coordinating sections of the hive mind." "Are you sure?" Admiral Hana demanded. "Yes, ma'am." "Watch the attack patterns. Whenever one of those ships moves, the ships around it change tactics. They're like relay stations for the hive mind." Hana understood immediately. "If we destroy those command nodes, we disrupt their coordination." "Exactly," Taeyang confirmed. "It won't kill them, but it'll confuse them." "All ships, this is Admiral Hana. New priority targets. Sending coordinates now. Focus all fire on the command vessels." The combined fleet shifted targets. It was risky pushing deeper into the enemy formation to reach the command ships. But it worked. The first command node exploded in a ball of green flame, and immediately hundreds of destroyer ships around it began moving erratically, their perfect coordination broken. "It's working," Taeyang said. "Hit the next one." One by one, the command nodes died, and with each one, the destroyer fleet became more confused, less effective. They were still dangerous, still numerous, but they weren't the unstoppable wave they had been. The hive mind recognized the problem. It started pulling back, trying to regroup and adapt. But Admiral Hana didn't give it the chance. 3 months had passed since that first battle, and the war had changed. It was no longer a desperate retreat. It had become a grinding, brutal campaign that neither side could afford to lose. The destroyers kept coming, wave after wave, learning from each defeat, and the combined human Kelvar fleet kept stopping them, paying for each victory in blood and metal. Captain Ren had lost count of how many battles he had fought. His ship, the Steadfast, barely looked like the same vessel anymore. Human and Kelvar technology had been merged together out of necessity. His weapons were a mix of both designs. His shields used human generators with Kelvar focusing systems. It worked, but it was ugly. He stood on his bridge looking at the tactical display. His fleet was about to escort a convoy of medical supplies through a dangerous sector. Intelligence reported destroyer scouts in the area, which meant an attack was likely. "Captain, the human ships are in position," his tactical officer reported. 3 human destroyers were providing escort, led by Commander Sung Ho, a veteran who Ren had fought beside many times now. "Good," Ren said. "Let's move out." The convoy began its journey, 6 cargo ships surrounded by warships. It should have been routine, but nothing was routine anymore. 2 hours into the trip, sensors detected destroyer ships approaching fast. Here they come, Ren muttered. All ships defensive formation. The destroyers had changed their tactics since that first battle. Instead of massive waves, they now attacked in smaller, faster groups. Hit-and-run raids designed to destroy supplies and wear down the defenders. The hive mind was learning. 20 destroyer ships came in fast, targeting the cargo vessels. Ren's fleet moved to intercept, but the enemy was quick. One cargo ship exploded before they could stop it. Medical supplies that could have saved hundreds of lives gone in an instant. Protect the remaining ships. Commander Sung-Ho's voice came through the channel. His destroyers moved in, creating a shield with their own hulls. 2 of them took heavy damage, but they held the line. The battle was short and vicious. The destroyers destroyed 2 more cargo ships before retreating. It wasn't a major victory for them, but it hurt. Every loss hurt now. In the aftermath, Ren floated near Sung-Ho's damaged ship. Commander, your vessel took serious hits. Return to the repair station. Can't, Captain, Sung-Ho replied. His image on the screen showed burn marks on his uniform. We're needed at the front. My engineer says we can keep fighting. Ren understood. They were all needed at the front. There was no rest anymore. No time to fully repair or recover. Just constant fighting, constant vigilance. On Kelvar Prime, High Chancellor Mira reviewed casualty reports with growing concern. The humans had lost 63 ships in the last 3 months. That was thousands of lives. Young people who had come from Earth to fight for people they had never met. And they kept fighting. General Thrace stood beside her, his expression grim. The human fleet is down to about 75% strength. They're taking losses faster than we are, because they put themselves between us and the enemy, Mira said quietly. She had seen it in every battle report. Human ships always positioned themselves at the most dangerous points. Always took the riskiest assignments. They're dying for us. Yes, Thrace agreed. And they never complain about it. Mira pulled up another report, this one from Ambassador Velos at the Galactic Council. Several other species had started sending additional support after seeing the humans fight. Small contributions, but more than before. Some council members felt ashamed that a young species was doing what they should have done. But it was still mostly humans dying out there. Dr. Minji worked in the medical bay, her hands moving automatically after months of constant surgeries. Another injured pilot. Another set of burns to treat. Another life to save or lose. She had stopped counting how many patients she had seen. Stopped trying to remember all their names. A young human engineer named Junseo lay on one of her beds, his leg crushed in an accident during repairs. He was barely 20 years old. Doc, am I going to lose the leg? He asked, fear in his eyes. Not if I can help it, Minji said, already preparing for surgery. But you'll be off duty for a while. Can't be off duty too long, Junseo said. The fleet needs engineers. The fleet needs you alive, Minji corrected firmly. Let me do my job so you can go back to yours. She saved his leg, but it took 6 hours of surgery. Heejin assisted her, both of them exhausted by the end. When it was done, Minji stepped outside the medical bay for the first time in days. She looked out a window at the stars and tried to remember why they were doing this. Then she saw a Kelvar civilian transport passing by, full of refugees being evacuated to safety. Children pressed their faces against the windows, alive and safe because human ships held the line. That was why. Those children were why. Engineer Bora stood in the ruined engineering section of a human cruiser, the Defiant. The ship had taken a direct hit from a destroyer weapon and half her engineering crew was dead. The survivors worked frantically to contain the damage, but it was bad. We're losing containment on the reactor, one of her engineers reported. If it goes, the whole ship goes with it. Bora climbed into the damaged reactor chamber herself, radiation warnings screaming around her. She had maybe 10 minutes before the exposure became fatal. She worked faster than she ever had in her life, rerouting power, bypassing damaged systems, praying to anyone who might listen. 8 minutes later, she climbed out, and the reactor stabilized. The ship was saved, but Bora's radiation exposure was high. Too high. Dr. Minji would probably confine her to medical observation for weeks. Ma'am, you shouldn't have gone in there, her assistant said, worry clear on his face. Someone had to, Bora said simply. And I'm the chief engineer. It's my job. Captain Daewon received the report about Bora's injury with quiet frustration. Another good officer hurt, another hole in his crew that would be hard to fill. He was tired, so tired. He couldn't remember the last time he had slept more than 4 hours. He sat in his quarters staring at a datapad filled with letters. Letters to the families of crew members who had died. Every captain had to write these letters. It was part of the job. But that didn't make it easier. Dear Mrs. Park, he read from the latest one. I regret to inform you that your son, Lieutenant Park Jin-woo, died in the line of duty during combat operations in the Kelvar sector. He gave his life protecting a civilian convoy. His sacrifice saved hundreds of innocent lives. He was a brave officer and a good man. The words felt hollow. How did you tell a mother that her son was dead? How did you make that okay? You couldn't. You just wrote the letter and hoped it brought some small comfort. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Come in. Captain Ren entered, looking uncomfortable. Captain Daewon, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I needed to speak with you. Of course, Daewon said, putting the datapad aside. What's on your mind? Ren sat down heavily. I wanted to ask you something. Why are you still here? You've lost so many people. Your fleet is damaged. Earth must be calling for you to come home. Daewon was quiet for a moment. Earth is calling for us to come home, he admitted. There are politicians who question the cost of this war. They want to know why we're dying for aliens halfway across the galaxy. Then why don't you leave? Ren asked. You've done more than anyone could expect. More than anyone else did. You could go with honor? Because the job isn't finished, Daewon said simply. The destroyers are still out there. Your people are still in danger. If we left now, everything we've fought for would be lost. He looked at Ren directly. Some things are worth seeing through to the end, no matter the cost. Even if it cost you everything. Even then, Daewon gestured to the datapad with the letters. Every person who died in this war knew the risks. They volunteered anyway. They believed that protecting our allies was worth fighting for. Worth dying for. I can't dishonor their sacrifice by giving up now. Ren looked at the human captain with something like awe. Your people are remarkable. No, Daewon said. We're just stubborn. When we commit to something, we see it through. That's all. But it wasn't all, and Ren knew it. The humans had a quality that most species lacked. They had the ability to care about people they had never met, to fight for causes that didn't directly benefit them, to keep going when any reasonable species would quit. It was that quality that had brought them here. And it was that quality that would see them through to the end, whatever that end might be. Lieutenant Tae-yang made a discovery 3 days later that changed everything. He had been analyzing captured destroyer wreckage for months, trying to understand how the hive mind worked. And finally, he found something. Admiral, I need to show you this, he said, bursting into Hana's office. Hana looked up from her reports. This better be important, Lieutenant. I'm trying to figure out how to explain our casualty numbers to Earth Command. It is important, Tae-yang said, pulling up his data. The hive mind isn't distributed like we thought. There's a central nexus, a main hub that coordinates the entire destroyer fleet across light years. I found references to it in the computer core of a command ship we destroyed. Hana stood up slowly. Are you telling me there's a single point of failure? A target we could hit that would cripple the entire hive mind? Yes, ma'am. Lieutenant Tae-yang worked for 6 days straight, sleeping in his chair when exhaustion forced him to stop. Around him, his team analyzed every piece of destroyer wreckage they could find. Computer cores, navigation systems, communication arrays. Somewhere in this data was the location of the nexus. On the 6th day, he found it. Admiral, I have it, he said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. I found the nexus location. Admiral Hana came to his station immediately, along with Captain Daewon and General Thrace. They looked at the coordinates on his screen, and Hana felt her blood go cold. That's deep in destroyer territory, she said quietly. Past a dozen systems they control. We'd have to fight through their entire fleet just to reach it. Yes, ma'am, Tae-yang confirmed. And once we get there, the nexus will be heavily defended. This won't be easy. Daewon studied the map. How many ships do we have that are combat ready? 640 human vessels, Hana said. Maybe 300 Kelvar ships in fighting condition. The rest are too damaged or already destroyed. Against how many destroyers? Intelligence estimates at least 5,000 ships between us and the nexus. Maybe more. The numbers were terrible, but Thrace surprised them all by speaking up. If we don't do this, the war continues until we all die. At least this way we have a chance. High Chancellor Mira, listening in from Kelvar Prime, agreed. General Thrace is right. We either strike now or we lose slowly. I'd rather die fighting for victory than running from defeat. Hana looked around at her officers, at the humans and Kelvar who had fought beside each other for months, at the allies who had become more than allies. Then we go. All ships that can fight will join the assault. We leave in 48 hours. The news spread through the fleet like lightning. This was it. The final battle. Either they would destroy the Nexus and win the war, or they would die trying. There was no middle ground anymore. Dr. Minji prepared her medical bay for what she knew would be the worst day of her life. She had treated thousands of wounded over the past months, but the casualties from this battle would be beyond anything she had seen. She made sure every bed was ready. Every supply was stocked. Every one of her medical staff knew their jobs. Heejin approached her quietly. "Doctor, what are our chances?" Minji didn't lie to her. "Not good. But we don't get to choose our battles. We just do our jobs and save everyone we can." Engineer Bora, recovered from her radiation exposure, worked frantically to repair as many ships as possible. Every vessel that could fight needed to be ready. She barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. Her team worked just as hard, knowing that their work might mean the difference between victory and defeat. One of her engineers, a young woman named Sora, asked the question everyone was thinking. "Chief, do you think we'll make it back?" Bora didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "I think we'll do what we came here to do. Beyond that, we'll see." Captain Wren gathered his crew on the bridge of the Steadfast. They looked tired, scared, but also determined. They had come so far, lost so much. They weren't going to quit now. "I won't lie to you," Wren said. "This mission is probably suicide. The odds are terrible. We'll be outnumbered and fighting deep in enemy territory." He paused. "But if we succeed, we end this war. We save our people. We protect our families. That's worth fighting for." His crew nodded. Every one of them volunteered to go, even the ones who were injured. Even the ones who had every reason to stay behind. They were Kelvar warriors, and they would see this through to the end. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Humans and Kelvar preparing for what might be their last battle, writing letters to loved ones, saying quiet prayers, checking weapons one more time. Everyone knew what was coming. The fleet assembled at the jump point. Nearly 1,000 ships, all that remained of the force that had started this campaign. Captain Day-Wan stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the Armada on his screens. So many had died to get them here. So many sacrifices. This had to be worth it. Admiral Hana's voice came through every speaker on every ship. "All vessels, this is Admiral Hana. In a moment, we're going to jump deep into destroyer space. What we face there will be the hardest fight of this war. Many of us won't come back. But if we succeed, if we destroy that nexus, we end this threat forever. Not just for the Kelvar, for every species in the galaxy." She paused. The destroyers thought they could consume everything in their path. They thought no one would stand against them. They were wrong. Today we show them what happens when they threaten our allies. Today we fight not just for survival, but for victory. All ships prepare to jump. The fleet entered hyperspace, and for a few moments there was peace, the calm before the storm. Then they emerged into destroyer territory, and the battle began immediately. Destroyer ships surrounded them instantly, thousands of them, forming a wall between the fleet and the Nexus. They had known the humans were coming and had prepared everything they could to stop them. "All ships, attack formation," Day-Wan ordered. "Push through. Don't stop for anything." The fleet charged forward like a spear, trying to break through the destroyer lines. Ships died on both sides within seconds. The Indomitable shook from multiple impacts, but Bora's engineering team kept it running. Explosions lit up space like terrible stars. Taeyang coordinated the attack from his station, directing fire on weak points in the destroyer formation. "Concentrate fire on Sector 7. Break through there." The fleet pushed harder. Human and Kelvar ships fought side by side, covering each other, protecting the wounded, never giving up. They took terrible losses, but they kept moving forward. Captain Wren's ship took a direct hit that killed half his crew. His tactical officer was dead. His weapon systems were failing. But he kept fighting, kept pushing forward, kept the destroyers away from the human ships beside him. Commander Sung Ho's destroyer was torn apart by concentrated fire. He ordered his crew to evacuate, then stayed at his post to give them time to escape. His last words over the radio were, "Keep going. Finish this." Dr. Minji worked in a medical bay that was falling apart around her. Hull breaches, power failures, wounded flooding in faster than she could treat them. Heejin worked beside her, tears streaming down her face but her hands steady. They saved everyone they could and mourned those they couldn't. Bora crawled through burning corridors to reach a damaged power coupling. Explosions rocked the ship. Debris fell around her. She reached the coupling and made the repair, restoring power to the weapon systems. Then a blast threw her against the wall and everything went dark. The fleet fought for 3 hours straight, losing ships with every minute. But they kept pushing forward, kept getting closer to the Nexus. Admiral Hana's ship was destroyed, but she evacuated to another vessel and kept commanding. General Thrace died when his flagship exploded, taking 100 destroyer ships with it. Finally, they broke through. The surviving ships, maybe 300 of them, reached the Nexus. It was massive, a station built from the corpses of 1,000 worlds glowing with the terrible power of the hive mind itself. "All ships," Daewon said, his voice calm despite everything. "Target the Nexus core. Fire everything you have, every remaining weapon fired at once. Railguns, missiles, beam weapons, torpedoes, everything." The Nexus shields flared, held for a moment, then shattered. "The core was exposed. Again," Daewon ordered. "Hit it again!" The second volley tore into the Nexus core. The hive mind screamed across every frequency, a sound of pain and rage that made equipment spark and fail. Then the Nexus exploded. The blast wave was massive, destroying dozens of ships on both sides. But when it cleared, the Nexus was gone. The hive mind was dead. Across the battlefield, destroyer ships stopped moving in coordination. They scattered, confused, acting as individuals instead of a unified force. The threat that had nearly destroyed the Kelvar Union was broken. Captain Wren sat in his damaged ship, barely believing what he was seeing. They had won. They had actually won. Around him, his surviving crew members cried and laughed and held each other. Daewon opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Daewon. The Nexus is destroyed. The mission is complete. All vessels, withdraw to Rally Point Alpha." The surviving ships began the long journey home. They left behind the wreckage of hundreds of vessels, human and Kelvar alike. The cost had been terrible. Nearly 60% of the fleet was gone. Thousands dead, but they had won. The trip back to Kelvar Prime took 3 days. Dr. Minji worked constantly, trying to save as many wounded as possible. She found Engineer Bora unconscious in a corridor and got her to medical care just in time. Heejin survived, though she would carry scars for the rest of her life. When the fleet finally reached Kelvar Prime, the entire planet was waiting. Billions of Kelvar watched as the battered ships limped into orbit. High Chancellor Mira stood at the spaceport, tears streaming down her face as the first shuttles landed. Captain Daewon stepped off his shuttle, exhausted and burned, but alive. Mira walked up to him and, without saying a word, embraced him. Around them, Kelvar and humans did the same, holding each other, mourning the dead together, celebrating the survival together. "Thank you," Mira whispered. "Thank you for everything." Daewon pulled back and looked at her. "Your people would have done the same for us."